Hi, everyone. Rob Olson, partner here at M13, head of data strategy. My background is also on the operational side, so initially heavily in the weeds with large scale data sets, sitting with consumer marketing teams at big pharma, understanding consumer behavior on the patient side, efficacy of their online, offline marketing tactics. Then I worked with a bunch of different performance marketing heavy brands, spending heavily on direct response TV, direct to consumer online. Worked with them to integrate, disparate data sets across marketing operations, call center, support team, sales team, to have a more holistic view of their business. And then most recently spent almost 6 years at DigitalOcean here in New York as an early employee, building out central data capability organization that worked across the business with every other operational team to basically build, maintain a single source of truth, encapsulating sort of all the data generated by our business and our customer base for our pretty highly complex product offering, as well as some predictive capabilities on the data science side, and an insights team that partnered to work on evaluating new business cases for investment.
So, Rob, you just mentioned predictive capabilities, and we are living in a time where arguably no one could have predicted what we're going through right now. I would love to hear your perspective on every entrepreneur's 2020 plan just got thrown out the window. And everyone is looking for, how do I get insights on my business faster? How do you think about that? What are some of the things that some of the founders or entrepreneurs should be thinking about as it relates to just getting up to speed on how their business is changing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing's clear: this is a time of uncertainty, a lot of unknowns, and a lot of the data you've gathered on your business is less reliable or completely unreliable at predicting what's going to happen today, tomorrow, probably the next few months, if not longer. But I do think it's important to sit back and think about the difference between fundamental changes that are being driven in your customer base, in their behavior, versus some short-term nuances that you need to react to around the who and the how of your customer base and how they're consuming your products. One thing I'll say is, with so many unknowns, I think it's important to spend time really focusing inward on your business and listing out sort of what you do know and what you do believe. And then sort of at the same time asking, what do I have control over? There are a lot of unknowns that you really have no ability to answer. And there are a lot of knowns, similarly, that you have no ability to impact. So focusing on those unknowns where you can gather some information, and focusing on knowns that are more flexible, that you have levers that can actually change things. So thinking about your core metrics that are driving your business model, the different customer segments and products within that, and thinking through how much is really known and unknown about those dynamics at play, and listing out sort of what you believe you have control over, what can you actually do about it, what decisions can you actually make. So in terms of getting insights faster, whether it's what will happen to my cohorts, I don't have 12 months to figure out customer profitability. You really need to zoom in the microscope during this time and dive into the weeds a little bit. It's no longer about monthly cohorts. You need to be thinking in daily cohorts, weekly cohorts, and comparing sort of early signals of your customers during this crisis to those in the pre-crisis world. Making sure you understand what your customers traditionally do in their first session, their first purchase, that first week of activity, and comparing apples to apples about what that customer and that early behavior looks like now versus what it looked like before. Where are they coming from? How are they digesting data and information when they first are in the consideration phase? And I think, if you're on a smaller team, it's really on everyone as a part of a founding team to build that story for themselves, digging into the weeds and really tracing individual customers across all of the different data sets you have on them, whether it's how they came in, what they viewed on the site, how they first, what they purchased, any sort of questions they asked from your support team, and building that story and that narrative about what's happening in those first hours, days, and weeks for your customer base, so you can start to question and push on that story with any anecdotal evidence you're getting by looking at those customers. Are they following your assumptions? Are they behaving as you had believed customers should behave prior to this crisis, or really where you're going to find some interesting insights, or what odd behaviors are you noticing that are cropping up for the first time, that when you're diving into the weeds, you're seeing things that are just strange and that you really have to grapple with. How do I explain this new behavior?
And Rob, to that point, what are you seeing in terms of companies prioritizing certain KPIs? Has there been a shift? We often talk about a shift towards profitability, thinking about customer economics. Have you seen that shift play out? If so, what are some of the KPIs that you're advising founding teams to have their eye on?
Yeah. So I think right now there are businesses that fall on all ends of the spectrum right now, whether they have been massively sort of put on pause, they have no new revenue, no new acquisition, no new customers, versus those who may be opportunistically able to actually accelerate growth right now. So if you're in the case where you've got pretty strong headwinds against you in terms of growing your user base right now, I think it's really important to look into the behaviors that are driving some of your most successful customers historically. If you're on a recurring revenue type of business, or have a platform where people are continually contributing, thinking about the different types of behaviors that lead to and then continue to sustain your super users, and what the profile and the data points really look like for your top 10, 20% of customers. Because gaining that understanding and really trying to derive whether it's upsell revenue, whether it's referral revenue, or just higher levels of engagement from those top super users, that is going to help sustain sort of this life heartbeat of your business and the engagement, while you may not be able to bring in any new customers. On the flip side, if you're really trying to ramp up and you have some tailwinds helping you out during this crisis, again, thinking about how do I double down and spend on acquisition channels that typically tend to maybe have a higher cost per acquisition, but tend to drive those super users, and really doubling down on saying, how am I going to come out of this crisis with a more solidified top 10, 20% of users that are highly profitable, that sort of pay dividends in the ways that they drive a network effect or a referral effect for your business, rather than focusing on the long tail and traditionally sort of the lower quality, lower spend, fine ROI, but low CAC, low LTV type channels.
Cool. And Rob, one question there that I often get from entrepreneurs is, now more than ever, you have to be cost effective and, mindful of costs. And, a lot of the BI platforms that are out there and tools are not exactly cheap. And so one question I would have for you is, what are the tools or resources that you would turn to, knowing that you gotta, get these insights, but it has to be done in a cost efficient way?
Yeah, it totally depends on obviously the scale of your business, how complex your business is from a data perspective. If you're using off-the-shelf tools to run, an e-commerce store, a lot of the, reporting solutions that are available there are going to get you a lot of the high-level numbers. But at the end of the day, if you're part of a small team, digging into the source data and getting access to the ability to drill down to a single customer and look at all of the data points that customer is generating, as they progress, is going to yield a lot of sort of qualitative, I'll say qualitative insight, but I mean N equals one quantitative insight. You can view data and gain a lot of insight through looking at smaller scale data and trying to interpret, during this sort of time of unknowns, what am I seeing here? What is this behavior? A lot of teams that do have really expensive BI software set up to track all their metrics maybe essentially glossing over and not honing in on some of the underlying behavioral changes that are going to take a few months to really pop up in the top line numbers. So I think, again, getting into the weeds, and whether it's pulling exports of the raw data and sort of looking at them customer by customer, if you don't have the ability to go out and sort of or if you don't have anyone in-house who's sort of a data analyst, who can look for sort of top decile or top 1% of customers across different attributes that can start to signal, hey, this is an odd behavior, or hey, this is something we haven't seen before, or someone who's doing something really weird. Hey, I have a customer, if our average SKU count is people check out with 3 things in their basket, but we've had 4 people check out with over 200 items in their basket. That's never happened before. Look at those customers. Maybe even email them and ask them, I'm trying to gather information about what it is you're doing and understand how I might be able to act on that information.